Hi, listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of I Never Knew, but My Dog Did podcast. I am Maureen Scanlon. I am a master life coach, and I help you recognize and elevate your self worth for your desired life. And doing this podcast is a part of that to show you that my guests who have been through possibly things that you're going through right now can encourage you and give you hope that you too can overcome. And so that's really my get to why I do it. And my life coaching is an extension of the podcast. So you know where to find me on that one. We create a safe space for you. And this is all about being vulnerable and really coming to terms with who we are. My next guest is so fascinating. I already feel a connection with him. I told him he's my brother from another mother. Um, I love his energy. I feel like we literally could be related. But it was really cool when he came across my screen. It was interesting because what he does is something that I've actually done a little bit of and got certified in. But I've always been fascinated in the deeper aspects of who we are, why we do what we do, and things that keep us sort of stuck or in the same patterns. And so my next guest, Matt Johnson, is a hypnotherapist and an NLP coach. If you don't know what NLP is, it's neuro linguistic programming. And he turned his recovery journey into powerful methods to help others break free from subconscious blocks. And I cannot wait to get into how he did this. So, after a devastating brain injury left him living in darkness, Matt discovered that hidden PTSD was sabotaging his healing. By rewiring his subconscious with hypnotherapy and NLP, he not only recovered his health, he developed a method for helping others release deeply rooted emotional baggage that we all have, right? I always say we've got a backpack. Every day when we wake up, we can have rocks in it that are the things we carry around, or we can take them out and be much lighter. And that's how we're going to find out how Matt can help us with that. So, welcome to Matt to I Never
Hello.
Knew. So our podcast, we do start off with sort of telling the audience and listeners, you know, where we came from, because really nobody wants our advice if they don't believe we've been where they are, and I don't blame them. That's kind of the cool
Yeah.
thing I believe about coaching versus therapy is we're allowed to share that we had our struggles too. We had things happen. So what I call it here is your knee story, Matt. And the knee story is we've had many in our lives. And I know my knee story, there's like this profound one where you're just on your knees going, I just can't believe this happened again. Or I keep doing this thing over and over. And, how do I get out of this? And I have no hope. And, that sort of idea. Can you share with us how you got into hypnotherapy and what your experience was to move you to what you're doing now?
Yeah, my knee story is actually a flat on my back story, if that's okay. But it's
Nice, nice.
about 10 years ago, I got a severe brain injury. I was out hiking tide pools with my kids here in San Diego, and I slipped and landed the back of my head on a slab of solid rock. I hit so hard, my brain actually rebounded, hit the top of my skull, and I took the part here above my eyes, and damaged my optic nerve and all that. Just brutal pain. If you've ever been zapped by electricity and felt that intense pins and needles type feeling, that's what was going on in my head. And for the next several years, I was so sensitive to light and sound, I couldn't even be in a room with the lights on. It was just too painful. And so I started out going the medical route. I'm sitting there in, my dark dungeon, and I had black hefty bags taped over the windows and all that just to, keep all the light out and everything. Couldn't even look at my, computer screen at first, but I started going to neurologists. The first one told me there's nothing I can do for you and tries to schedule me for a follow-up visit. I'm like, why am I gonna come back if there's nothing you could do for me? I didn't say that, but it's just made no sense to me. The second one gave me a pill that took enough of that sting away that I could actually, look at my computer for a little while. And so I asked him, this is good, but can you help me sleep? Because I was going through these just brutal downward spirals where the pain made it hard to sleep, which made the pain worse. And, it was not a pleasant sensation. He told me, no, there's nothing I can give you. So on to neuro number three. And right away, she tells me, oh, yeah, let me give you amitriptyline. And that fixed it. I was getting a consistent, 7 hours a night, no problem. I'm beyond grateful to all my doctors. I would not be where I am without them. But the only reason I tell that story is how many people would have stopped with that first one. You know what I
Pain,
mean?
pain. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going through the same thing right now. I'm
Okay.
going through the
Okay.
same thing. I can't believe that you just had this story. Had to follow up with my surgeon. I had some cervical spine surgery.
Oh,
Two of them within 3 weeks of each other, plus a thyroid surgery, which my listeners all know. But anyway, long story short, I got a brain MRI. I was asked to go to a neurologist. And this neurologist literally did not look at my brain MRI. And he said,
mm,
I'm just going to assume it's normal. Well, I have weakness on my left side, numbness in my hand and
oh,
my foot, and I'm off balance. So went to a follow up with my surgeon, my 3 month follow up, and they're like, you had a stroke, Maureen. They're like, I think you need a second opinion. So thank you that I feel validated.
okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Why do these neurologists do that? Why do these specialists do it? It's almost like you have to be in a coma for them to want to treat you. I don't know.
My guess is like, with, we were talking about NLP and, psychology and stuff like that before. We are fascinated by it. We geek out on it. And so you ask me just about anything subconscious related, I can probably give you a good answer on it. Someone who gets into, oh, I should be a doctor, that would make my family happier, whatever that reason is, they're not going to geek out on it. They're going to get that piece of paper and go into practice and they'll know what they got taught in school, but they
Yeah.
don't learn anything beyond that. And they don't keep up on the latest and greatest. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
I found that with my neurologist on that tiny little topic of that little sliver of neurology that called healing a brain injury. I knew more than my neurologist did, and that terrified me.
Right.
Yeah, because
Right. Oh my
I
God.
yeah, I realized at that point that medical science was not going to heal me, and you know and yeah, this was probably a year and a half, 2 years into me trying to recover. Spent, all my time that I could playing stunt pilot, just trying every harebrained treatment that you could think of. I came up with a 3-page document on everything that helped me, everything from amino acids to hyperbaric oxygen. And I presented it to the San Diego Brain Injury Foundation. I still have that video, where I'm explaining everything on that. I give those out for free, by the way. Anybody who's got, brain related issues, look me up. I'll just shoot you a Google Drive link. But it's really good stuff. It's, some of the stuff on there has really, really helped me. And very little of it was told to me by a doctor. It was me just pounding the pavement, pounding Google actually, and reading medical study after medical study for, a couple of years. And so, like I said, about that point, I realized that, medical science was not going to heal me. I was stuck in that dungeon and, it was not an acceptable answer to me. And so like what you're dealing with, what I had to do, what I did on day two of sitting in that dungeon was I made a decision that I was getting out of there. Now, the word decision comes from the Latin root de, which means from, and cadere, which means to cut. When you make a real decision, you cut off any other possibility. I
Mhm.
had absolutely no clue what that journey was going to look like. I just knew I was not going to stop. And that is the difference, I think, is in, the doctor says, oh, there's nothing I can do for you. Okay, I'm done for versus, all right, you don't have my answer. Who does? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're going through any kind of significant health challenge, you've really got to, take charge of that journey. And, if you look at I'm not trying to badmouth doctors at all. I have nothing but respect for them. I love them. Like I said, wouldn't be where I am without them.
Yep.
But if you think about it, he's seeing how many patients a day. He's drawn from, what he learned in medical school, which is not everything. As I learned, when I made that realization that, they weren't going to be able to cure me, I started looking around for, all right, what else is out there?
Yeah.
Now, I'd been a complete skeptic my entire life, but I started, dabbling around in, energy medicine and things like that. And, lucky for me, I live in California, so I had a lot to choose from. But I was seriously going on Groupon and trying, everything I could find. And all right, if it's a scam, at least I'm not out that much money. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
one of the first things I tried was called Reiki. And I told you I had those pins and needles in my head. The best description I can give is she took those pins and needles and kind of made them fly in formation, if that makes sense.
Wow.
And the sting just, temporarily went away. I'm like, whoa, I have no idea what you're doing, but please don't stop. And at the end of the session, I asked her, can you show me how to do this? And so I spent several days with her, got, trained up in Reiki. I went to, pranic healing, Qigong, Silva holistic faith healing, anything I could find that made a difference. I tried to just, dive in and get good at it. And over the next couple of years, I did a huge amount of healing, really turned the tide with my injury, but I just could not shake that light and sound sensitivity. I just, I could get out and live my life in, small doses with hats and noise canceling headphones and, dark glasses and all that. Looked like I was going to a shooting range, I had weird looks wherever I went. But even that, I couldn't do very much of. It definitely couldn't be in a loud place or anything. So at this point, I'm thinking, do I have permanent damage? And so I started looking around again, and I found a special type of brain scan. You mentioned your MRI. MRIs look at the tissue, which, unless with a brain injury, unless you've got something really bad, it doesn't really tell you much.
Right.
I found a special type of a scan called a SPECT. It's done by Dr. Daniel Amen out of Orange County here. He actually has offices all over the place. But an MRI looks at the tissue. The SPECT scan actually maps the electrical activity in the brain, shows you if there's any areas that aren't functioning. He's written a ton of books, but he shows all these scans from like Alzheimer's patients where it looks like they got a hole in their brain. You know what I mean? Just that area has shut down. And so, long story short, I get my scan and my brain was okay, but areas that were supposed to be dark were lit up like fireworks. I had PTSD and I'd had it, most of my life and never even realized it. My thinking at that time was, that's something soldiers get, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so I'd known for years that I'd had, severe anxiety issues, depression, all that stuff. I've been suicidal 3 times, growing up. I, I'd had 3 therapists. I'd done the meds and all that, and just I knew that wasn't the path for me. It's, the meds made me worse. The therapists, one of them kind of sort of helped, but it was like a garden hose against the tide. You know what I mean? So yeah, but eh, lucky for me, I was familiar with the incredible power of hypnosis. When my dad got, he smoked a pack a day for 30 years, tried over and over again to quit, and pills, patches, gums, you name it, failed every single time until he got hypnotized. After one session, he told me he never even craved cigarettes again. Um, Same with NLP. I was introduced to NLP. It was neuro linguistic programming for the non, brain geeks out there. But I learned that from Tony Robbins, and Tony famously had a woman that had 152 different personalities, and he was actually able to integrate her right there on the spot in about 45 minutes. If you think for a minute how many years of therapy this woman would have needed to probably not get very far. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the power of this stuff. So just knowing, those couple of anecdotes, I went in, I got, quadruple certified in, hypnotherapy and NLP and all that, peppered every single instructor I had with the exact same question. How do you heal PTSD? They all tried to help me, but none of them really had the answer. And so I'm like, all right, I got to do another, here comes more rabbit holes. So I spent the next 2.5 years just studying from, the best of the best in both fields, NLP and hypnosis. And I put together a system that I was able to actually heal myself. And, that is, that's my flat on my back story. It's, I use what I learned, during those times to help people, overcome, I call it emotional baggage. It's, some of the toughest mental, emotional challenges you can imagine. I've helped people overcome, and that's just,
Yeah.
I love the stuff. I'm just, obviously I'm fascinated by it. I love geeking out on it because I've been talking for the last 10 minutes straight, but
No, I
that's
love
my
it.
flat on my backstory.
I love it too. I love it too. It's why you're here in front of me because off air, I was saying the same thing to you. Once I decided, and there's the word decided choices,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
changes everything. Same thing though. Once I like decided and found out about coaching and how I could do things out of the box, and I also did NLP certifications, and it was like I just geeked out on it too because I wanted to know not just like why do I do what I do? Why do I think the way that I think? But the subconscious. Now, tell me if I'm wrong, because in my studies of psychology, they don't deep dive into subconscious. They
Mm-mm.
really don't talk too much about those things that are sort of trapped in the subconscious. And my
Yeah.
understanding is a subconscious is sort of a storage, as you will, or sort of a vault of facts, not really emotions. Is that correct, or am I dumbing that down a little bit too much?
Your subconscious, think of it like a computer, actually supercomputer. It
Okay.
runs based on programs. It's not logical. It doesn't think. It just runs on whatever it's programmed with. Now, if you think about the first time you ever drove a car, right? Your hands were 10 and 2, and you were super focused on not hitting anything, right? And it took your full attention. Fast forward a few years, and you had coffee in one hand, cell phone in the other. You know what I mean? I'm kidding. Please don't do that. But how did the process become so automatic, right? Most
Yeah.
of us have had the experience of driving and realizing we haven't even been paying attention, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you not crash? It's because your subconscious learned how to drive. You've done it over and over again by repetition, and so it learned the process. That's how it works for, just about everything. It's, awesome process for driving, but problems can happen when we hand it things that we don't want it to do. Negative emotions, limiting beliefs, bad habits, things like that.
Mm.
When those get trapped in there, when it gets programmed with those things, that's when you got a problem. That's when hypnosis and NLP can really, those are the ultimate toolkit for going in and actually changing those programs.
Wow, I love that so much. And I was actually gonna say, so it's repetition that sort of
Hmm.
programs it, but then I'm thinking, I had a podcast guest one time who witnessed the murder of her family. And so
Oh,
that's a
wow.
one-time deal. That's not a repetitive thing. What happens to those major one-time traumas? Do they get stuck in the subconscious too? Is that something that kind of does the driving of the conscious
They
too?
do. Yeah, they do. A lot of it has to do with what meaning you give it, though. It's,
Mm,
human beings, we all have, you probably remember this from NLP school, we all have 100% control over two things, what we focus on and the meaning we give to it.
yeah.
So if we give it the meaning that I'm in danger, you know what I mean? Life isn't safe, then yeah, you're going to be running those scripts. But if you give it a different meaning, an empowering one, like, hey, I develop situational awareness now. I'm not going to put myself in those spots or, something along those lines.
Mm.
It's very heavily dependent on what meaning you give it, if that makes sense.
No, I love that so much. Listeners, I'm going to repeat that for you. So, two things, what you focus on and
Hmm.
what meaning you give it, which
Yes.
is really crucial because someone could take something they witness as it's trauma and they can just be like, no big deal. It's not going to get stuck in that subconscious, which is really crazy. It's still going to be a record of it, but it's not going to be something that's going to drive
Yeah.
the conscious so much. Love that. One of the things I remember from my NLP training that I still use today, that I've done with my coaching, and this is just a little tiny thing, and then I'm gonna throw it your way where you're gonna give us some techniques. But I
Okay.
remember the stop sign.
Hmm.
So when you've got this thing that you're focusing on that is not serving you, you're supposed to take that picture and put it down, minimize it in the corner, and then you put this
Hmm.
stop sign up there. And I remember them saying, black and white, you got to make it color. And that really has helped me and it's an easy NLP technique where you just sort of bring your conscious into the place of recognition, which is the key to changing, right? Is we have to
Yes.
recognize something before we can change it. And so just minimizing something that's repetitive, putting it down, making it smaller, and then putting this big stop sign just tells me, okay, this isn't serving me anymore. Let me think about this. Let me move on. So that was just my little example that I remember that stuck with me. Tell me something that you find is like one of the most effective things that worked either for you or for your clients.
For that particular, people having intrusive thoughts and things like that. All right, so a lot like you said, let's make the unconscious conscious here. All right, think about you either think of that in a picture, a word, or sounds, or a feeling, right? Those are called our visual, auditory, and kinesthetics, right? So really tune into how do you do that? How do you replay those memories? For about 80% of us, it's going to be a picture, so I'll go with that, but you can translate on your own.
Mhm.
Where do you hold that picture? All right, to the right or to the left, above you, below you? How big is it? How far away? Is it in color, black and white, flat or 3D? Is it a picture or a movie? You know what I mean? So take whatever you it just came up for you. And we always do that. Whatever comes up for you is absolutely perfect. That's how your subconscious just encodes that memory. Take it and try shrinking it down. Make it the size of a postage stamp and see what that does to the feeling. Now, for most people will feel a release doing that. You can also take a bucket of white paint and dump it on there. That will soothe it for a lot of people. And you can also do the technique of taking that whole picture and sending it way out on the horizon. So far, you can just barely see it. It's just a dot way out there. Um, there's all kinds of things we can do that. We can we can find out how your subconscious does belief and disbelief, and we'll do a very similar process to what we just did. And, something you want to believe, we'll shift into your belief station, I call it, and we'll do the opposite for, the limiting beliefs you want to get rid of. I work with a lot of people who've got, some of those heavy duty, memories and, things that happen to them. There's a very cool NLP technique called the movie theater where we go through and we'll scramble up that movie lots of ways. And you're probably too young to remember records, but uh, once you
Really?
scratch that record,
I
I'm just
literally,
guessing, but
I literally went to the record convention here in Austin last weekend. I'm
no
not even
way.
kidding you.
Oh,
I have
wow.
a record player, I have a cassette player, I have a CD. I'm old school. I
Okay.
am
Okay.
older than you think. I'm probably older than you are.
Okay. Well, my daughter's 18 and she has a record player. They're coming back into vogue now. So
They are. They are. My grandson
okay.
just turned 18, and that's why we took him there, yeah, as well. Everything's coming back because we were so cool in the 80s. That's all I'm saying. So,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
I digress. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But if you scratch that record or that CD, it would never play the same way again, right? We do the same thing with the memories and just take all that emotional sting out of them, and it's a really freeing process for people. It sounds stupid until you get in and do it. It's just like I said, we're making the unconscious conscious. Once you tune into, all right, how am I doing this? How am I playing this memory? How am I doing this emotion? Whatever that is, we can then play with it and turn it into what we want, if that
Make
makes
the
sense.
unconscious conscious, which I love that because that's the difference between the behavior modification and then the just sort of sitting there and doing nothing. I mean, because you can sit
Mhm.
with it. I call it your trauma file. So I've always said, to my clients, well, okay, we all have had things that have happened that didn't serve us, that were, traumatic or, didn't feel well. We can leave that file open on our desk and read it every day. And it's just going to
Yeah.
reinsert that right into our subconscious. Or we could just close it up, put it in, and this is sort of an NLP technique I kind of made up, I guess. And then I put it away in the file. And then every now and then it might come out of the file, and then I can close it back up and put it away. What I'm loving and what I loved about NLP is that we all receive information and communication in different ways. Visual, like you said, the visual, the auditory, the olfactory. And what's cool about that with NLP, you can receive it or change it the way that you want. I remember in my class, popcorn, the smell of popcorn like triggered someone. And that's a
Yeah.
smell. So what we did was we made the smell of popcorn into a good memory, into something
Hmm.
good. So it no longer brought that subconscious thing that didn't feel good into this conscious, oh, yeah, I remember watching this, as a kid, and we had so much fun. That smell of popcorn was good. So is that really important to find out with people how they receive information? Because I'm a visual girl. I'm super visual. I'm also a medium, which is interesting, is
Same. Yeah.
I get I
Oh,
he
cool.
yeah, I'm more auditory. I'm auditory when I'm connecting spiritually, but in conscious world, I'm
Interesting.
extremely visual. Is that something, do you think, is important to know how you receive information?
Yeah, definitely, because you can learn. All right. So, for example, I'm very visual. I'm kinesthetic. I'm what's called an auditory digital, which is we're weird. We're kind of all over the place with the modalities. But if I listen to an audible book, I absorb almost nothing from it. It's I've really got to be watching or doing in order to absorb anything from it. So knowing that about myself, I canceled my Audible subscription and save myself $15 a month. So yeah, it actually pays off. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's again, it's learning how to work with your brain. Your brain has certain tendencies. We're all good in some things and not so good in others. So when you get the processes to tune into that and learn how you do things, that just gives you more power to be able to work with your brain more effectively.
Yes, and what's magical about you and what you do is that and I'm not getting too scientific here, but we have neuroplasticity, which means that
Mhm.
our brains are pliable, and the NLP and the hypnotherapy are a part of plying that, if we would, like, molding this thing
Yeah.
like clay, like you with a brain injury, me with a stroke. Like, we can fix this thing. You're never doomed. Also, like my history,
Yes.
my family history, there's so much Alzheimer's and dementia. And my doctor recently
Oh,
said you can go get this test and find out if you're going to get it. And I started thinking, well, that's silly. Why would I take that test? It's called a T-PAL, I think is what it's called. I think, and I'm
I
thinking,
know the
well,
one you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Why do I want that test? I don't want that test because I have a neuroplastic brain that I can avoid that if I want to, or I can try to do as
Yeah.
much as I can to avoid that. So I feel like sometimes, like you said, medical and science sort of doom us to this thought that this is who we are and what we are, and we have more power than we think we do by using more of that
Yeah.
NLP and hypnotherapy. So I want to hear more about the process of hypnotherapy because um, I know I've done hypnosis. I know I can be hypnotized, but I losing my thought process, jumping ahead. I love what you said though about retaining the information. This is where I'm struggling. And as an older adult, you get up into, I'm 55, okay? I can drive 55.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
55.
That's young. What are you talking about? Older.
Grandma 4 right here. But I cannot I cannot retain information. The only thing I can bring forth are lyrics from songs, from every 80s
Okay.
and 70s song ever known to man, but I can't bring up the name of someone I met last week. Is hypnotherapy something that also can help with that?
It can be. What happens? All right, I'm going to geek out just a little bit on brain here. Your brain is the most incredible supercomputer ever invented, but it has, functionally, it has three main layers. You have what's called your reptile brain, which is basically it controls your fight or flight. Should I eat it, run from it, mate with it, whatever. It's the only thing it cares about is keeping you alive for the next 2 seconds and passing on your genes. That's all it's concerned with. Above that, you have your mammal brain, which for this, think of your dog, right? Understands love, family, the pack, all that. Whereas some reptiles will eat their young, right? That's the difference between the two brain layers. Above that, you have your neocortex, which is basically, your higher order logic and all that. When you're stressed, what happens is your body will drain blood from your brain, so that whole neocortex, the logical part, will empty out. And at that point, guess who's in charge? Right. I when dealing with someone who, I've seen this over and over again. Somebody's in a really extreme stress state and they do something that, is stupid, or, they're trying to figure out later on, what was I thinking? And I always tell them, you weren't, your reptile brain was. It made a calculation in that moment to keep you alive for the next 2 seconds. And whatever that was is what you did. And, that goes for everything from a war zone to asking a pretty girl out on a date and something stupid comes out of your mouth. You know what I mean? Same
Yeah.
process. But if it's stress related, then yeah, hypnosis can absolutely help with that kind of thing. Um, as far as, all right, you mentioned a few things there, the dementia and things like that. Um, Definitely, all right, neurons that fire together wire together, right? So if you are using your brain, you're learning new things, which I know you are. And basically you're keeping those synapses firing, then that's really going to help because you're forming new neural connections all the time. B, Qigong is phenomenal for, and I can send you some stuff if you're interested. But as far as, keeping those energy circuits working in your brain, and, I actually have one for, brain optimization that, works really well. But you want to keep that. It's one of those things, I told you, Western medicine did not have the full answer for me. Eastern medicine gave me a whole other dimension to play with, and it really, really was huge for me as far as getting into just how my body works. Your body actually runs on electricity. When the electricity stops flowing through you is when you take a dirt nap.
Mhm.
Um, the energy medicine traditions and all that teach you to really work with that and keep those circuits clear. That you can get clogs, jams in your body, and that can be when you develop issues. But I that is a really big subject. I don't want to get into it here,
I know,
but
I know.
um, yeah, but I would do both. Diet is huge. Staying away from sugar, processed foods, that kind of thing. Eat from Mother Nature. Shop along the outside of the grocery store, the outside wall. That's where all the food from Mother Nature is. You get into the middle aisles. That's where you get all the processed stuff that will, clog you up. And, your body's not really designed to run on that. But you want to be eating food from Mother Nature, doing your energy work, whether that's exercise. Now, we talked about, people who have been through, trauma, stress and all that. That stuff actually gets trapped in the body. There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score, another
Yeah.
one called Answer Cancer, where he talks about basically cancer and autoimmune and disease and stuff are a lot of times found in the same people. And he said it gives a really good case for it's what he calls a sensitizing event, or in other words, trauma. It's a shock to the system that can cause that stuff. That stuff gets physically stored in your body, and at that point, you need exercise to get it out. That could be yoga or whatnot, or it could be the energy work, whatever. You got to physically flush it out of your body. And you also got to deal with the mental processes, because if you flush it out physically, but you're still running the same thoughts that created it, it's just going to come right back. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
holistic thing. But yeah, it's taking charge of that. There was a study one time where they took people who were in their, I think 70s, but actual old people, and they took them, put them in an environment where they were around all the stuff that was popular when they were young. You know what I mean? The old record players and the old music and all that, physically measured hormones and all that kind of stuff, and their bodies got younger over the course of a few days of that. So be very careful what you say to yourself. Someone very important is listening. Okay. So
I love
We're
it.
not old. I'm telling you that right now.
That's great. That is so good. Be careful what you say about yourself. Someone important is listening. That is fan freaking tastic. And that's exactly we talk about stinking thinking, you know,
Yes.
and you think about if you think about it in your life, because as you were saying that, I was thinking back to because the beginning of my life was, very um ugly. I did not love myself and I was in a lot of harmful relationships, believing I had to chase love. I was a love addict. And I think about my health at that time and whew, it was cancer. I have autoimmune. And now though, after a year, really a lot of medical struggle, and I'm great, but I'm starting to wonder, I should probably talk to you. I'm starting to wonder if there's stuff still stuck in there, even though I believe mentally I'm well. There's got to be some stuff stuck, or I wouldn't have. I mean, I shouldn't say I wouldn't have. I mean, this it happens. The bodies, break down, or for whatever reason, heredity. There's a lot of DNA
Mhm.
involved in that, but that's really interesting, especially like, like arthritis. I have degenerative arthritis, so I had to have cervical spine surgery.
Okay.
But so that's not really a stuck thing, that's just a hereditary. But you're right, there are other things, maybe autoimmune and cancers. And that would bring us to what you were saying, where we might not know things are stuck in our subconscious, right? Is
Right.
that is that
Right.
fair
Yeah,
to say? And
absolutely.
how
Yeah.
do we get the
Yeah.
recognition of what could be there when we don't even think we have
That,
anything?
yeah, that is a really tough one because I would say, how do you feel? What do you feel in your body? If you can feel something, then yeah, you've got, something going on in there. But most of us, myself included, get used to that feeling. We just think it's normal. You know what I mean? It's,
Mm,
I could, I could honk my car horn right outside your bedroom window, 3 a.m., do it enough times, you'll start to sleep right through it. Same thing. You can get used to just about anything. I would say, try out, hypnosis, meditation, anything that can get you super relaxed, and then try to notice the difference. You want to create that contrast there. So, I had the experience of, you know, this was probably, I would say, a year or two after I healed my PTSD, and I got rid of all my hypervigilance, all the, I had the whole, when you pick up something, when you have that, heavy duty emotional stuff happen to you when you're young, kids tend to take blame for things that, isn't really their fault. Really common one is mom and dad are fighting. I must have done something wrong. You know what I mean? From ages 0 to 7, especially, it's called the imprinting phase. You take in huge amounts of data, but you haven't developed what's called your critical faculty yet, which means you can't judge anything that's coming in. So you come up to it with a lot of false information about yourself, false conclusions. And so when bad stuff happens to you, it's it becomes just the kind of this web that we got to go in and take care of. You know what I mean? Just these mental processes. Mine, I shrunk myself down. I learned at a very young age, just head down, mouth shut, and nothing will
yeah,
happen. So
yeah.
um you know people can have all kinds of self-worth issues, things like that. If you're, if that event happens, you're a soldier on a battlefield, well, you're probably already an adult or close to it. Your personality is pretty much formed. So that would be a matter of just dealing with that event. You know what I'm saying? There can be
Yeah.
some ancillary stuff, but not as much as when it happened to you really young. You know what I mean? That's your whole window on the world, your window on yourself. That takes a lot of unraveling. Absolutely doable, but
Mm,
just it's a process. But
wow.
to get back to the point of my story, I was probably a year or two, from what I considered, having healed myself, and I noticed I had some stuff going on, internally. And so I started, doing some Reiki and Qigong to release some stuff from, it was my pancreas. And I had many panic attacks just working with the energy of it. I got some type of a release from it. And It surprised me. I thought it was all gone, but I'm not an expert in this. There's a whole branch of psychology called, somatic release and all that. It's releasing those, that stuck stuff in your body.
Yeah.
Yoga is very good for it. Exercise is good, but yeah, the Eastern energy work, things like that. I use Reiki and Qigong, and it just depends on what appeals to you. I think try them
Yeah.
all, and what works well for you. Do it that way.
Yeah, and I'm a huge advocate for meditation. And some of us have struggles, but I've tried every different way. When you have a very active brain that has attention, deficits, it's very hard to
Yes.
sit and not go off different places. But, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I always say if you're in a relaxed state, like I have a hot tub and every night that's the last thing I do is literally it's facing the sunset. I have a really pretty nature view behind my house and I'm in the
Nice.
hot tub every day. And that's where my thoughts come in. I'm playing music, but that's where my thoughts come in about life and things that are happening. So I think everyone, listeners, you have to just kind of find your place. Because what I was going to ask you, Matt, was, are there any key questions we could ask ourselves about something that's stuck in our subconscious? My daughter brought something up that was really cool, and I thought this is kind of good to ask ourselves these questions. It's
Mhm.
in my family, it was my family of origin. We were middle class, but it was always a struggle, and my mother was very frugal, and money was always this lack. And then when I got married very young, money was lack. We were in the military. You don't make a lot. And so my daughter had said to me, Mom, you have a bad relationship with money. And so starting a business, I'm thinking, oh, I got to work. This is going to be really, really hard instead of having a good relationship and reprogramming that. But isn't that
Yeah.
sort of a good, like questions like that? Like, what's your relationship with love? What's your relationship with money? What do you think about, you know, things that happen in the world, justice? Does that I hope I'm making sense or am
Oh,
I,
totally, totally.
okay.
Yeah. I would say look at the results you're getting in your life. If you
Mhm.
want to find out if there's something in there, work towards your goal. And if you're getting approach avoidance or that feeling, that's where you start. A lot
Okay.
of times you've got some type of belief down in there that, either I'm not worthy of it, I'm not, this is a level 8 thing that I'm a level 7 person or, whatever that is. A good clue is your buts and your ifs. I could do this, but
Yeah.
I could do this if, right? However you complete that sentence is a really important clue. So if I'm trying to level up my business and I'm getting, this resistance and I'm self-sabotaging and all that, ask yourself those questions. Work towards your goal and notice where you start to feel that resistance. And all right, what's going on right now? Am I thinking I'm not worthy of this? Am I thinking I can't pull this off and I'm going to get embarrassed in front of people and everybody will say, I told you so, or whatever that is for you? Those are really common ones, by the way. That's why I mention them. But, whatever that happens to be for you, you just, finish those sentences and that'll give you important clues as far as, where to get started.
That is fantastic. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you for deciphering my, wobbly path there.
I
I
have
love
one more
that.
story on that. If you
Yeah.
if you're interested, this is a good one. If you remember the Enron scandal where they were cooking the books, right? And it took the whole company down, took down everybody's 401ks, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I worked with a lady who she hadn't done anything shady. She was, honest. She was an attorney, but she worked for Arthur Anderson, who was the accounting firm who had done the cooking of the books. She lost her job, like, through no fault of her own, but the company was going down. And so, she got to hit the street with Arthur Anderson on her resume, not a good place to be at that time. She tried 3 times to start her own business, and 3 times she got right up to the edge and pulled the rug out from under herself, just self sabotaged. And I met her at a mastermind, And she was, talking about her thing, and I'm like, you've got a subconscious block there. I can see it. Give me a call. And 15 minutes, we worked through it. We did the movie theater, what had happened and all that. Got her through it, and boom, she launched the next day, and she's crushing it now. So it's, yeah, if you got some type of event like that that's causing that approach avoidance, that's another important clue. Yeah, she had a little bit of trauma there.
That is fantastic. That's fantastic because you just made me recognize something. I have five businesses, and the thing that I
Oh,
always say is, I'm not salesy.
okay.
I'm not good at marketing. So there's a block. I know
Okay.
there's a block. There is a block right
Yeah.
there. I
Yeah.
know it.
Okay.
You made me
So with
recognize
not being
that.
salesy, do you want to not be pushy? Do you want to be liked? What's going on? Do you feel unethical pushing people, twisting their arms, or
I think it's kind of more of an embarrassment. Like
okay, yeah,
I've always
yeah.
kind of stuck
Super duper
to,
common.
yeah, like I've stuck
So
to build it and they will come. I never felt like I had to go to people. I wanted people to come
yeah,
to me, but
yeah.
that's silly.
I'm very
That's
similar. I have a similar makeup. Let me ask you a question, and I know the answer to this already, but your product, does it help people?
yes, absolutely.
Someone coming out the other end of your service that you're giving them, are you helping them?
Yeah. Yeah. Every single business I have
So
helps
would it be
somebody.
somewhat unethical for you? Yeah. Would it be somewhat unethical in a way for you to not give them that opportunity? Right?
Oh.
You're robbing them of that help if you don't. Now, here's the thing. If you are, there's a couple of different layers to this, and we'll get to the second one in just a second. But all right, if I know my service is going to help somebody, and I want it for them, I want the result for them, not the money for myself. I want the result for them, right? I know what it's going to do for them. I know what their life is going to look like, what it's going to do for them, their family. You know what I mean? I, that people can smell. You know what I mean? Versus having commission breath. Or yeah. But um, that is how you approach it. It's I know the outcome. I've helped these people get it, and if you haven't helped somebody, get it, do it for free. Do it, which I started out doing that. My first several clients I did for free. Got a couple testimonials out of it, but otherwise I was getting them the result, and that really cemented in my head that hey, I can really help people here. I'm good at this stuff. So um, do that, and also. All right. There's, it's very common for people with this issue to have some type of imposter syndrome. And what happens, the higher up the success ladder you go, the more imposter syndrome there is. They've done tons of studies on this. What happens is when we all started life looking up at everyone and everything around us, right? That is a very submissive position. If you watch like the action hero movies or whatever, the camera's always looking up at the superhero. It's that looking down at someone is a very domineering position. We got a huge impact on ourselves subconsciously, just being in that subservient, submissive position. So what we want to do, and this works for a sales conversation, this works for public speaking, or asking a girl on a date. Imagine yourself, you're standing in front of that person, that crowd, whatever that is, and imagine growing up so tall that you can, you're King Kong sized. You can put them in the palm of your hand and go ahead, put them in the palm of your hand, and you can point at them and laugh if you'd like. It kind of, amplifies the feeling, but it just teaches your subconscious that that person, that crowd is not a threat. And, I belong here. You know what I mean? That really, I mean, it sounds dumb until you try it. It really does work.
I love that so much. And I could see that working because I have this that imposter syndrome because people will say, "Oh my God, Maureen, you're killing it." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm just, I'm just doing what I like to do. No big deal." I'm definitely making myself smaller and I need to make myself bigger like King Kong. But oh my God, I could talk to you forever. We have to close it up. We're almost at our hour. But I want to
Okay.
know, I know that you have a gift for the audience and I want to know
Yeah.
where they can reach out to you, what you have going on, what you have coming up. This is your time to shine. I want you to toot your horn, okay? Be King Kong right now.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. If you'd like to check out some more cool NLP stuff, you can go to Matt Johnson NLP. That's MattJohnson, and then NLP for neuro linguistic programming.com. And I have a link to a free course. It's called NLP Mind Magic, where we do the imposter syndrome thing. We didn't get into this. One of my favorite exercises called unspinning fear, where we take fear and dissolve it instantly. We have limiting beliefs, procrastination, 12 different exercises that are basically my most requested ones. But you'll become an expert at taking control of those subconscious processes that are driving whatever that issue is. That's free. I have links to, if you want to book a session with me one-on-one, I do those for free. I don't do sales. All we do is, we get to the bottom of whatever's going on with you, come up with a game plan, and, you're free to take it and run with it. Or if you want to work with me, that's cool. I also have coming up a subscription service that I'm really excited about. Think of it as Netflix for your subconscious. I call it Limitless by Design. I told you about how I kind of shut myself down and growing up. So many people are dealing with some version of that.
Yeah.
Limitless by Design is helping you get over all that stuff that you picked up, during, your childhood and, whatever, life is, kicked you in the teeth with. Every month we do a different theme. January is hitting your New Year's resolutions, making them real. February is, rewiring your relationship patterns. March is subconscious spring cleaning, where we deal with, negative emotions and beliefs and things like that. But every week you're going to get a really powerful hypnosis, and that's going to undo, help you take control of that programming and turn it into what you want. 52 weeks, 52 life-changing shifts. And I'm really excited about it. This is going to change a lot of lives, and I'm keeping it super affordable. You can try it out 30 days for $7, and it's 27th after that.
What?
But
That is
yeah,
so
I'm keeping it
reasonable.
affordable for a reason. I'm like, when I got my PTSD diagnosis, I had no clue where to turn. And, I was lucky that I'd known about hypnosis and all that. And I want people to see the incredible power of it. You know what I mean? Because again, I'd been the therapy route and all that. In my particular case, therapy is wonderful for a lot of people, didn't do a lot for me. And for someone who's, done the work, but they're still struggling, that's who I'm wanting to help. And so I'm trying to get get the word out to as many people as I can, just raise awareness. Hey, these tools are phenomenal and, literally life changing. But
I
that's why I'm
have
keeping it so
an
cheap.
I love that. I love that you're making it affordable. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
listeners. You spend more than that on fast food a month, I'm certain.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that is insane and yeah, and valuable. You could change your life for $27 a month. And what a neat thing that we'll cover every month. It'll be a different subject. So there's always going to be something that will be for somebody. I mean, oh my gosh, I love
Yeah.
that. I love that and I love you. And listeners, if you're listening, you're missing out because he looks just like Kevin Costner, and I'm certain he has heard that before because I feel like I'm talking.
There's videos on my website if you want.
I'm gonna have him on my YouTube too. So we're gonna have a video where you can see him as well because he's just got this bright smile and he's just so full of life and we're so happy that he was here today and that you are well and you've turned your struggle into paying it forward to helping others and that's what this is about. That's what this podcast that
Yeah.
I want it to reach, so as far as we can reach anyone that needs to hear it. So hang in with me and thank you so much for being here today, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're amazing. All right, listeners. Well, that'll do it for today. I hope you enjoyed Matt as much as I did, and I know that wow, I could learn so much from him. You could learn so much from him, and I just appreciate all of you being here. I still have all 5-star reviews on Apple, and I'm so grateful to everyone. So keep those coming, and don't forget to reach out to me if you need some coaching. Before we get hypnotherapy or after you get hypnotherapy or while you're getting hypnotherapy, I'll work hand in hand with what Matt's doing. You can find me at lifecoachmaureen.com. And my books, what I love is that he said that the critical factory stage 0 to 7, that is what I wrote my books for. So my children's books, I'm sorry, my dog Bexley is just like me, and my cat Grayson is not like me, are both for that age range where we're teaching mindfulness, that emotions are good, that we have acceptance of differences, and that we can find commonalities in others. And it's repetitive, it's rhyming, and it's fun, and it enhances the love for animals. So get those for your little guys as we have the holidays coming up. It's on every book site. And yeah, we have our doggy boutique here in Austin and online, mydoggiseverything.net. And yeah, that'll do it for today. I do love you all for being here. I really do enjoy doing this and being back after my health struggle hiatus makes me even more grateful to be doing this and to be meeting people like Matt. So you guys take care of yourself, take care of one another. Most of all, take care of my furry babies. Let's make sure that we adopt and do not shop. We have a furry baby out there waiting for a forever home. And I'm just going to say, walk through a shelter, any shelter, and there's going to be this lightning connection, like in the cartoons. You see each other, and you're just going to know that dog is going to pick you, or that kitty is going to pick you. So if you are lonely or you just have a lot of love you want to give, go get yourself an animal because, man, you're going to get back the love that they give 100-fold. So, again, I love you all. Thank you for being here. And until next week, y'all take care. Mwah!